We've talked about some of the evidence we can see that tells us that there is really a God, that we can know there's a God. And we've talked a little bit about how we can know which God and why the Bible, why we don't follow some other system. Obviously, there's lots and lots of other questions, but one of the neat questions is, what about fossils? That's what I teach. I teach earth science. I teach about fossils and the history of the earth and dinosaurs and all that neat kind of stuff. Here's a picture of a fossil. Now, what is a fossil? Well, a fossil is the evidence of any kind of life that has existed on the earth in the past. And fossils tell us that things aren't always the same as they have been in the past. Things are different today. The fossil you're looking at right now is called a Petoskey stone. And I collected that fossil not very far from where I live, here in Michigan. As a matter of fact, up in Petoskey, Michigan, there's tons and tons and tons of this stuff in the rock. But you know something? The Petoskey stone is a coral that can only live in really, really, really warm water, in tropical water. If the water gets any colder than 68 degrees, the Petoskey stone can't live in it. You may not believe this, but Petoskey, Michigan is not a tropical paradise. There has been change. I've worked on an oil rig in Alaska where we found palm tree leaves down at the bottom of the hole that we were drilling for oil. So there's been a lot of change in the history of the earth, and the fossil record tells us about that. But we also know that there are other animals that have lived in the past that are really different than animals living today, like this one. Now, you do need to understand something here. People think that all the dinosaurs were the great big guys, okay? That they weighed millions and millions of pounds, some of them. Well, that's really not true. Most of the dinosaurs, way over half of the dinosaurs, were little guys. You know, the size of a Cocker Spaniel. The big guys were very, very rare. And it's important to understand that the biggest animal that has ever lived lives today, the blue whale. The blue whale is so big that I could swim through his aorta, through the blood vessels in his heart. So the dinosaurs weren't all big guys, but they were pretty incredible. And I've actually had the opportunity to dig dinosaurs out of the ground. Man, it's so much fun. You find all kinds of neat things to tell you how they lived. And we have even found some specimens that are dried out dinosaurs. They died and they got dried out because of very, very dry conditions. And what you got left is a shriveled up, dried out dinosaur with food in his stomach. You can see what he ate. This particular dinosaur, you find all kinds of material that is made out of pine cones and palm leaves and ferns and stuff like that. So he ate plants mostly. But you know we have also found the eggs of dinosaurs? Yeah, we have found the eggs of dinosaurs with baby dinosaurs inside. And they're not still alive. And you can cut them open and you can see what's inside. And what's inside is all of the pieces and all the fragments of the dinosaur. But that's just one dinosaur. We find other dinosaurs that look like this. Now, some of these dinosaurs are very, very different. When you look in their stomachs and you look at the things that they ate, what you find is millions and millions of little teeth. Lots of skin, lots of bone fragments. Yeah, this was a meat eater. And so this is a very different kind of dinosaur. It has a different story to tell us. We also see dinosaurs that look like this. And sometimes we change our understanding. You know, when I was a little kid, they used to tell me that the Stegosaurus spine plates were for protection. And they said, well, if something tried to bite him, he'd get all those spine plates, and that wouldn't be very good, and he would spit him out. Well, we know that's not true anymore. I mean, there's his protection over there, you know, that spike on the end of his tail. That's a pretty good weapon. What you're looking at here is the world's first air conditioner. See, what happened was that the blood went back and forth in those plates and helped to cool him off, to radiate the heat. So even back in those days, God had designed animals to do very specific things, and there was a reason for those animals being here. And sometimes we find specimens like this ankylosaurus. We have actually found whole sections of the tail. We have found eggs with baby ankylosaurus inside. And that tells us, again, a lot about how they lived and what they were like and some of the conditions under which they lived. And then there's Triceratops. 3 horns on the head. Yeah, you knew that, didn't you? And people ask me, they say, well, I don't understand. Why did God create dinosaurs? But you know something? We've learned some things about that. We now know that the dinosaurs were part of God's plan for man. That they helped get the earth ready for man. That if there had not been animals like this that cropped off all of the plants that were part of the earth at that time, that there would have been no opportunity for the plants we eat to come around. You see, these particular animals ate pine trees. Did you have a pine cone for breakfast? I don't think so. Did you have a fern for breakfast? I don't think. Did you have horsetail for breakfast? I don't think so. So you don't eat that. You eat corn flakes. You eat flour, you know, that came from grain. You eat apples and oranges and good stuff like that. But those plants couldn't grow until the dinosaurs had processed the earth, that the things that we use, like coal and the other things that were part of the system, had been produced. And when God had created the heaven and the earth, when He finished the earth was ready for man. All of the oil, all of the gas, all of the coal, all the things that man would need had been produced. So dinosaurs were part of the preparation of the earth for man. And we don't understand all of that yet. We're still learning that. That's why you may want to become a paleontologist, somebody that studies fossils. But one interesting thing is that sometimes things like this get interpreted in different ways. Do you ever see a picture that looked like this? Saying that life started out down here with some little amoeba-like guy, and after a long, long period of time, it eventually turned into you? Let me show you why that isn't true in a really, really simple way. Let's suppose that this was a real tree. You know, it's growing out in the backyard. And let's suppose that you came along with your axe and you cut the tree off right there. What would happen to that tree? Well, it'd fall down, wouldn't it? Can you think of something that has happened in the history of the earth that's like that? Something that took place that the Bible talks about that would have cut everything off and caused the process to stop? See, one of the things that people that believe in trees like this believe is that the earth has always functioned as it does today, that there's never been anything happen in the history of the earth that isn't going on right now. And so you'll hear people say things like the present is the key to the past, that all you have are wind and rain and glaciers and volcanoes and stuff like that. And they would say there's never been anything like a flood that covered the whole earth. They would say there's never been anything happen that would change the earth so that it would process differently than it does today. And yet all around us we see things that indicate there's been change like that. For instance, here's a picture taken in Alaska of a frozen elephant found in Alaska. Now when we examine this animal, what we find out is that the animal was eating plants that aren't in Alaska today. What we see is that the conditions in which the animal lived were very different than conditions that exist today. And we find these animals all over the place, many times in a position that looks like something happened very, very quickly, something very different than things that happen today. We have strong evidence today that a huge hunk of rock called an asteroid hit the earth in the past and wiped out the dinosaurs. So there have been things happen in the history of the earth in the past that are different than things happening today. And so when the Bible tells us that God created living things and that God has been responsible for the design of living things, we know that's true. Now, it's important to understand that there are many things that we learn when we look at fossils. You know, sometimes we find bones like this. There's whole fields of bones out there. And there's many things we learn from that type of process that help us in locating oil and gas and coal. But there are many things that the Bible doesn't tell us about the processes that have existed in the past. And so as we dig out fossils with high-pressure hoses, we extricate elephant creatures and things of this type, it tells us about the past. For instance, one of the things that the Bible does not tell us is when God did these things. The Bible just says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It doesn't tell us when. It doesn't tell us all the methods that God used. And you know something? I'm really glad that God didn't complicate the Bible by adding all this stuff that we really don't need to know to understand about Jesus and to know how to get close to God. I don't know, as a scientist, how God created the heaven and the earth. I have learned a few things about how God did it, about what the methods are. I don't have any way of knowing when God did these things. God created time. God began the beginning. And there's no way of telling how long ago those things happened. In the Bible, there are no words that really mean Tyrannosaurus rex. We read about the behemoth, which refers to cattle and cow-like creatures. We read about the Leviathan, which refers to great creatures in the sea, but those animals are with us today. So there is no word in the Bible that tells us all the special things that God has created. So you won't read about a duck-billed platypus in the Bible. That's just a marvelous creature that God has created that lives in a very special kind of environment. There have been millions and millions and millions of different kinds of creatures that has been in existence upon this earth. And if God had told us in the Bible about each one, we would have a Bible that would be so thick you couldn't even lift it. You would need a forklift to lift your Bible. So everything we know about dinosaurs fits with what the Bible says, but there's lots of things that we don't know. And Miss Jean, as she takes us through some of our studies in later videos, will explain more to you about dinosaurs in the Bible. But as a scientist, I want to tell you that dinosaurs are special. They're fun. And you need to learn everything you can about dinosaurs, but especially you need to learn everything that you can about God and how He loves you and how He sent His Son to die for you and about how being a Christian is really, really special.